Hey guys, welcome back to Mr. Wagner's class. It's April 13th. It's been a while. Hopefully spring break was good, but we're learning about Executive Order 9066. Um, it ties in with Japanese internment. So it was brought into action by President Franklin Delano Roosevelt in 1942. The Japanese had bombed Pearl Harbor, and basically 110,000 Japanese Americans were sent to different camps in California, mostly. And there was a very strong anti-Japanese sentiment. It could have been considered kind of like what created racism at the time. You didn't know who to trust. Many Japanese live on the West Coast today. They live anywhere all the way up into British Columbia, Vancouver, all the way down into California. And they were moving in for jobs. Usually immigrants move in and they get the jobs that most people might not like, but they start out and make a base and start out in a poor area and then work their way up. And they were always a hardworking crew in America, and then work their way up in society. And that up here on the top right, you'll see this where I'm pointing with the mouse. That's something I would hear like my pop or my dad maybe even referred to as the Japs after World War II, and it's kind of a racist term, kind of just what people thought of in that time period. My dad was 7 when this happened. So the internment, he still is a very open-minded guy and likes Japanese, but in that time period, they became the Japs, and then like that name kind of faded away. I gotta get rid of my marker that I made here, and get these signs hanging up all over, and it's compared to a couple of things in history. That's our second video for today. There's Roosevelt signing the form. Not quite sure what that is. So then there's these camps they would set up in California, and actually, no, this is the farms. Sorry, this is the farms. These are the farms where different Japanese were employed in the time period, 20s leading up to 42. And then they became military zones. 66% were U.S. citizens already, which is called Nisei. 33% were Japanese-born Issei, who could not be U.S. citizens. U.S. justification was that it's a military necessity. This actually went all the way to the Supreme Court. 120,000 Japanese ancestry people were put in 10 internment camps. Patriotism and resistance. 1944, 1,500 Japanese American men from the camps volunteered for military service. So you could either stay on the camp or you could join the military for us. That means that you're not obviously a spy, but you could die. So it's kind of like a pick which way to go. This is a Supreme Court case in 1944, Korematsu versus the U.S. Executive Order 9066 required all Japanese Americans to live in restricted areas. The issue is, does that Executive Order 9066 violate Korematsu's 14th Amendment right to equal protection of the law? And the decision of the Supreme Court was that the Supreme Court ruled that an entire race could be labeled as suspect classification, meaning that the government was permitted to deny the Japanese their constitutional rights. So your rights are taken away, and your entire group, until we figure out who's bad and who's good, you're always going to be kept here. Kind of like quarantining by who you might be politically. Okay. World War I on the left is basically everybody. They're trying to get you into the war. World War II is a lot more propaganda and whatnot. Many people had to be drafted. That's why they wanted the Japanese to possibly join. If you look at the numbers, Selective Service Act, 10 million registered, only 5 million volunteer in World War II, so they needed more people. All right, in our second video, we'll talk about what this compares to in history. So we're about to run out of time, so another video to follow. Fun Monday.